What's going on, folks? It is the lunch hour. I'm joining you on your lunchtime break, or you're joining me on your lunchtime break. Welcome to Icopod. I'm your host, Be Good, and I just decided we're going to dive right in today.
Wrong about grace. You are wrong about grace. You must pursue holiness. You must decide to be holy. You must make a decision to be holy. Without holiness, no man shall see the Lord. You must decide to be holy. Anything that you do not decide to repent of will not live your life. Any character that you do not decide to drop, it will not live your life.
All right, sorry to just come right in screaming at you, but at least I'm not the one who's screaming at you. Sorry to take any of you back if you've got traumatic residue from your days in Christianity. Uh, if this is triggering anything for you, maybe I should have had a trigger warning at the beginning. But yeah, we gonna talk about some things today. What's up, Aunt Kathy? She said, "Whoa, dude." Yeah, yeah. Uh, what was your church experience like? Did any of you come from the kind of churches where the person in the pulpit was screaming at you this way? Uh, how did you take it? Did it turn you off? Or is this completely foreign to you? We're going to dive back into this video in a minute. I'm going to give people a chance to come into the stream. But people send me videos all the time of things they want me to react to. And when I saw this one, I had so many thoughts. It triggers some things for me that I want to talk about today. He says a lot more, which we're going to get into. But first of all, come on into the chat, greet somebody in Reason's name, say what's up, make a new friend. This is not just for the skeptic or for the atheist or for the deconverted. I'm finding out more and more very many Christians who tune in because they're appreciative of being able to see what their world looks like through the eyes of someone who used to see things their way but no longer does. So, yeah, welcome. Welcome. We're going to come back to that video in a second, but like I said, come on to the chat, say what's up, and we're going to dive all the way in. Someone saw the last night's episode and helped me out. I did an episode with Jacob Berman of History Valley, and he was talking about how finding out that there was no hell in the Old Testament. Yes, there was Sheol, but there was no hell. That helped him to get over his fear of hell because you get a chance to see the evolution of the religion. And then in that episode, I talked about how when I was a Christian, even though I wasn't aware that there was no hell in the Old Testament, we did use this idea of Jesus tells a story about the rich man and Lazarus being in Abraham's bosom. As a kid or a young Christian, I heard that and thought, oh, that's the theological designation for where people went after they died before Jesus came. And then I was talking to Jacob Berman, and he had never heard of the Abraham's bosom concept. And then other people in the chat who were former Christians, they had never heard of the Abraham's bosom concept. I'm like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me my religious tradition just straight up lied to me, or they were able to give me this impression of Abraham's bosom as some codified theological explanation, but really that was just something that they were saying in our tradition. And then today in the chat, in the comments under that video, one other person finally was like, "Hey, I know about Abraham's bosom. It's not just you." I'm like, "Damn, thank you," because I was feeling like they really got me. But I don't know if anybody else out there has heard of this designation of Abraham's bosom. What it does, though, is it shows you just how much stuff the religious person has had to make up over the years to keep the thing going. You make up these different religious answers to questions that people are going to have, and you hope that the person you're telling this stuff to is never going to fact check you on it. Now, keep in mind, I grew up in an age where you really couldn't fact check. There was no internet. You didn't have AI overviews. So just imagine all the stuff that religion was able to get away with back when, in order to fact check it, you either had to be extremely studious on your own, or you had to pay tens of thousands of dollars in a Bible college just to be able to begin to take apart the things that you were taught. So one of the reasons why Christianity is waning in many parts of the advanced world today is because of how fact checkable it is. And you get a chance to run your version of the religion up against somebody else's version of the religion, and it sort of just calls out the manufactured, the manipulated, the man-made aspect of the religion. Well, that being the case, what's up, y'all? We're going to dive into today. Somebody sent me this video. I'm gonna put him back on the screen. I don't know who the heck this is. I don't know if this dude is I think it said he was a pastor. But we're gonna listen to him, and we're gonna see what the hell he's talking about here. All right. And y'all talk to me in the chat. If there's something that you can't hear, if it sounds a little wonky or whatever, let me know. We'll try to get it taken care of.
You don't know what grace is. Grace is what empowers a decision. A lot of you relax. A lot of you relax. You are waiting for grace to come and change that character. No, that is not how grace works. You must take a step. You must decide that today I am stopping pornography. I am stopping masturbation. You must decide that today I stop fornication. If you are a girl.
So one of the things that always catches me is, why do you have to scream at me? Like, even before I got to the point where I said, I'm never going to let another person talk to me in a God tone ever again. Like a God, if a being can speak a universe into existence, if a being is responsible for my being, that being can speak to me any way it wants. Just like when I was a child, my mother could scream at me because, hey, that's mom's. You know what I mean? What you gonna do? If a God were to show up and scream at me, what am I going to do? It's a God. Matter of fact, on my Facebook page today, I put up a thought on my Facebook page that says, if I die and a God says to me, why did you not believe the message that I sent through prophets and preachers? And I said, well, my response to that deity would be, why should I have had to? Like, you're a God, you have all this power. You can send prophets and preachers if you want, but why should I have had to believe them if you've got the ability to speak to me yourself? So the very fact that I had to believe them, something's wrong with your methodology. That's what I would say to the God. Why should I have had to believe them? And then a Christian who often comments on my page, the Christian jumped on and said, you're not going to talk to God like that. I didn't even know what to say, because I'm like, this is all hypothetical in the first place, but he was incensed that I thought that I might speak to a God that way. And maybe he's right. Maybe I wouldn't have the audacity to speak to a God that way. Now, I would wonder, why should I have had to? But maybe I wouldn't have said it that flippantly to a God. Well, either way, a God would have the ability to call me to the carpet and ask me questions like God did in Job, even though God was completely wrong in Job. Clearly, Job could not tell God that, so Job just had to suck it up and take it. Well, God could do the same thing with me. But if you're not a God and you talk to me like that, there's no way I'm going to sit under your lecture, under your your needling finger and let you talk to me in a God tone. If a God pops up and does it, fine, I'll deal with that when that happens. You show up and you start talking to me like a God, you start screaming at me, and you didn't give birth to me. Fuck is you doing? Like, what? So the idea that this preacher, pastor, whatever he is, can jump on and start talking to people like this and think that people would just take it. Like, who's sitting there taking that? You're not going to talk to me in a God tone. And I encourage you, stop letting people talk to you in a God tone. It's not just the shouting tone, because you could ask the question, does God shout? Like, God wasn't, and if you go back to the story in book of Genesis, God wasn't shouting at Adam and Eve, you better not eat from the tree in the midst of the garden. I would imagine if he did shout, maybe they would have never ate from it. Like, maybe the story would be different. God's walking through the garden in the cool of the day, calling for Adam and Eve. Adam, where are you? Where are you? He's like, Adam, where you at? So clearly God has an inside voice. Why is it that when people attempt to speak for God, they start screaming? Do they think God screams? Or is this really just an indication that, damn, I know I'm just a human being and I don't have the power that a God would have, so I've got to do something to make myself look as big in your eyes as a God would. It's almost like when cats, right? When cats get into like fighting stance, whether it be with a dog or another cat, why do they arch their back? Well, because they're trying to make themselves look bigger, look more threatening, so that you'll leave them alone. In the same way, the reason why the preacher has to start screaming and start hooping and hollering is because he knows there's no God present today. You can say all you want, I feel his spirit in this place, but he knows I've got to do something extra to give you the impression that a God is here. And so I'm going to raise my voice and I'm going to scream and talk at you all loud. I'm going to talk to you in a God tone because I'm not God. It's interesting that there are people who have experiences in church where actually the opposite happens, because it's not just the screaming preacher that's trying to talk to you in a God tone. Sometimes it's the preacher with the calm, soothing, very rational tone. Even he's trying to speak to you in a God tone. He's trying to become the still small voice of your conscience. And because clearly in the Bible, God's not always shouting and screaming and speaking through thunder and lightning, right? There's even a story where there's earthquakes and fires and winds, and it specifically says God was not in any of that. God spoke after all that in a still small voice. So you have pastors who will never scream, because in their mind, they're trying to emulate what they think is the voice of God, and they're going to speak to you in a very calming tone because they want to appeal to you in the nature of God that they believe is steady and calm and still. And either way, you're not going to speak to me in a God tone. And one of the chief aspects of a God tone is you can't question it. And the reason why this preacher is screaming is because it's a lot harder for you to think you can question him when he's screaming at you. So here he goes again.
You must pack your bag and leave the house of that boy that you are not married to. If you are a woman, you must tell yourself, no more adultery. Whether my husband provides for me or not, I must use my body to serve the Lord.
Is it acceptable to speak to you in a God tone, to scream at you in a God tone, if the thing that the person who's using the God voice is trying to get you to do is actually a more moral thing? If you think that's morality, if you think not masturbating is moral, if you think not watching pornography is moral, if you think being in a monogamous relationship is moral, if the person's trying to get you to do the thing that you think is moral, does that make it more acceptable that they will speak to you in a God tone? This person is trying to get people to do what he believes is more moral, and he knows he doesn't have the authority to call you to do these things. So he's utilizing the God character and speaking in a God tone to get you to do these things. I'm just curious, does what the person using the God voice is trying to get you to do, does that make the God voice go down any easier?
As a man, whether my wife satisfies me or not, I must remain holy, keep my body as a temple of the Holy Spirit unto the Lord. You must make a decision now. You must make a decision now. You must make a decision to change. Then
so I'm sorry, I'm triggered by this just a little bit, because going back to my Facebook page today, there's several Christians who are chiming in saying why God would, instead of just speaking to us, why God would be sending messengers to speak to us. And I haven't yet heard a good reason as to why God has to send messengers to speak to us. What's up, James? What's up, Michael Apple? I just looked at the chat, saw you guys in there. Like, God having to use these messengers to speak to us. The Bible almost, there's a story with Moses, where Moses, the people are mad at Moses, and then God thunders from the mountain. And then the people are like, oh shit, never mind, Moses. Like, we were mad that God was speaking to us through you, but now that we know how God speaks with the thunder and all that, fuck that. Don't let God speak to us anymore. You speak to us from now on, Moses. And it's sort of an ideology. It's a story told to make you okay with God never speaking to you personally. Because if I tell you a story where when God did spoke, it was so terrifying that the people thought, we're going to die if he does it again. Don't let God speak to us anymore. If I tell you that story and you buy it, then you're okay with God not speaking himself. Because even as threatening or frightening or off-putting as this guy screaming at you might be, this pales in comparison to what it would be like if a God actually spoke. So if you're religious, if you're buying into the idea of God needing to speak, you're buying into ideologies, you're buying into stories that people had to tell to cover for the bullshit that they were selling you. That's what ideology is. I don't know the real reason, so I'm going to make up a reason why I have to scream at you like this. Well, that's because my screaming is less threatening than what would happen if God actually spoke.
grace is what gives you access into the kingdom of righteousness. There is a kingdom called the kingdom of righteousness.
Now, most Christians would have a problem with what he's saying, because he's telling people what they must do if they're going to inherit this kingdom of righteousness. And then he turns around and calls it grace. But he just spent all this time telling you what you must do. I don't know if you weren't here at the beginning. At the beginning, he's trying to dispel the idea of grace. People think that grace means you can just relax and not have to live righteous. He comes on screaming, you're wrong about grace. Let him tell it. Let's let him say it from the beginning real quick.
You are wrong about grace. You must pursue holiness. You must decide to be holy.
It's weird because he's saying you're wrong about grace. You must pursue holiness. You must fight to be holy. You gotta. But then he flips it and says it's grace. That's one of the weirdest things about Christianity is, on one hand, they don't want you to take any credit for your salvation, for your endurance as a believer. It's God. He's the one who started the good work in you. He's going to be faithful to complete it, so that it's God that gives you the faith. It's God who's working within you to do his good pleasure. It's all God. But at the same time as they want to be able to say you don't get any credit and it's all God, they know that God's not going to make you stop smoking. God's not going to make you stop beating your spouse. God's not going to, you've got to do the work. So some kind of way, they've got to get you to do the work, but then not give you the credit. So they're going to say it's grace, but then tell you that you've got to do all these things. It's weird as hell. I used to preach it. I used to believe it. next week, I'm going to start doing a series where I deconstruct my old rap lyrics. And in those lyrics, I used to talk about what I was doing as a response to God's grace, but I was still giving God credit for me doing it. But at the same time, I knew I had the hardest time in the world doing it. So I'm like, well, damn, if it's grace and it's God getting the credit, why isn't he helping me more? Because I'm struggling to stop this sin. I'm struggling to do this righteous thing, and I can't get credit for doing it. But if I'm supposed to be giving God credit for, why isn't he doing more to help me do it? Why am I still struggling with this sin or that sin? We're not even talking about that today. That's this preacher screaming at you to be holy and calling it grace. And the Christian who wants to say, well, that's not really how it goes, you've got problems to work through as well. Because as much as you want to say it's grace, you know, the believing person, if he's going to look like Jesus, has got to do the work, but can't get the credit for doing the work. This video is actually not even the focus of what we're talking about today. This is another video I want to play. So you have this brother who's preaching at you. I don't know if this brother is in Africa or in America. But the video that we're actually going to go to is actually in Africa. And it's odd to me because what's happening in this video is what you're about to see is a cult. Maybe I shouldn't even call it a cult, because by saying cult, what I'm doing is I'm delegitimizing one belief system while trying to legitimize another. And I think they're all illegitimate. So I was about to call the Hebrew Israelites a cult. I think all of it is cultish. I think Christianity is a cult. Just because it's a dominant cult doesn't make it less of a cult. But what we're about to watch is an offshoot of the Christian cult, which is the Hebrew Israelite cult. And I know that they would say they're not an offshoot. They would say they're not a cult. They would say they're taking the Bible and they're believing it at face value, but they know some things about themselves that makes them not want to be part of what Christianity is. Hebrew Israelites it was started by Black people in the United States who began to get the idea in their mind that they are actually the children of Israel. They are the lost tribes of Israel. So Black people, Native Americans in this country, Latino folk, they all make up, they would say, the lost tribes of Israel. And the idea that the Black folk in America, the idea that they are transports from Africa is not true. They would say that the slavery of enslaved people in America, Black people in America, were not really people from Africa. And if they were taken from parts of Africa where Jews had settled and started communities and colonies, such that the people who were transported from Africa were not Africans originally. They were originally Jews brought over here and told that they were Africans, but they really are Jews. These are the Hebrew Israelites, the Black folk here who would tell you that they are Jews. Well, what happens is in this video we're about to watch, some of these folks, these Hebrew Israelite folks, go to Africa and try to present their Hebrew Israelite take on I don't know, I guess I want to say the Christian scriptures. I'm saying that as to not say Christianity, because I think they would say that they're not Christians. They're Hebrew Israelites. Well, these Black folks go to Africa and try to present their Hebrew Israelitism in Africa, and it doesn't go so well. So I thought it was worth watching. We're going to watch and check it out. Here they go. If you're wondering what the tumult and chaos is that you're watching, The people with the purple shirts on, they are the Hebrew Israelites, come from America to talk to Africans about Hebrew Israelitism. And they made a statement that got them in trouble. They said Jesus was black. And that did not go over well with these people in Africa. So these people in Africa accost them. The headline says attack, but I don't know if they physically attacked them as much as they surrounded them. They're screaming at them, and it's not going well. So that's what's happening here.
Huu ni mmoja kati ya walioumizwa. Naona ili ni jiwe.
It's going to be translated in a second.
Akagonga usoni. Kwa kuhubiria watu wetu tu ni watu wa maana na wao ni wana wa Israeli. Na Yesu Kristo mwenyewe ni mtu mweusi kama nyinyi. Akagongwa mawe.
All of them. We went to a church yesterday. We were teaching outside. As soon as the church heard Jesus was black, they were infuriated. We've just reading the scripture. They got so mad, they threw rocks. Why? Because a lot of you in Kenya hate yourself. You hate the way you look. You hate anything black. Why? Because it upsets your European colonizers. So they look, we're their brothers. We're here to help you. They start throwing rocks, men and women. They despise what the Bible says. So we read Song of Solomon. You read it, right? Yes, sir. And they were like, no. Picked up rocks.
Yo, there's so much going on in what they just said. I don't even know where to begin. So he's explaining, we were here in Kenya, we're talking to you guys, and we're reading from the scriptures, and we're talking about Jesus being black. And he says, and the people, these men and women, they picked up rocks, started throwing rocks at us. And I would imagine in their mind that probably made them feel justified, because anytime someone persecutes you for your religious belief, it almost emboldens you, because you're thinking, well, why would they be persecuting us if we weren't right? This used to happen to me as a Christian. When I would go out and evangelize, whenever we would get ridiculed, whenever we would get quote unquote persecuted, that would do nothing but shore us up. See, that must mean we're right. See, Satan hates the fact that we're out here preaching. I would imagine that for them, think about Jesus, right? When Jesus made certain statements according to the Gospels, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, they picked up stones to stone him because they didn't like what he was saying. I guess when he called himself the Son of God or whatever it was. So they're probably thinking, see, look, we're like Jesus. We're speaking the truth, and you all want to stone us for it. But the truth that they were there to speak is they're saying, we read Song of Solomon, and I don't know what passage they're talking about. I could almost bet, I would put money down that the passage they're talking about in Song of Solomon is where it says, I am dark and comely. And so the whole idea of being dark, a lot of people of African descent have seized on that to say, this must have been a black person, or at least a dark-skinned person. That's probably the passage that they're talking about. And he's saying, we're reading these things and we're saying Jesus is black. And when we say this, these people in Kenya, they picked up stones to stone us. But the reason why they wanted to stone us, let's go back to what it says.
Infuriated. We've just reading the scripture. They got so mad, they threw rocks. Why? Because a lot of you in Kenya hate yourself. You hate the way you look. You hate anything.
Wow. So because we're talking so many sad things about the history of Christianity in Africa and in America. So like in America, there was an entire period of history where black people, so what the guy that we just watched is saying, he's actually not, he could be wrong about what the people in Kenya are experiencing, but he's not wrong about a dynamic that has happened. There's a phenomena where Europeans have traveled the world, colonizing places, extracting all of the precious minerals and all the things from that place that would be valuable, whether it be diamonds or oil or precious stones, whatever it is. And in the course of doing that, though, they would also have have these Christian ministers go along with them. And the Christian ministers, their job a lot of times was to pacify the people, to evangelize the people, to proselytize, to convert the people. There's I think it's Bishop Kenyatta who said when the missionaries came to Africa, actually it was actually in Kenya, which is a nice little correlation here. In Kenya, I think it's Bishop Kenyatta said, when the missionaries came, they said, let us pray. They said, before we prayed, they had the Bibles and we had the land. They said, let us pray. And when we opened our eyes, we had the Bibles and they had the land. And so that's sort of a proverbial saying that explains how colonialism has worked. Europeans came, missionaries in tow, and the missionaries were there to help pacify the people. You Christianize the people, you talk to them about being peaceful and peaceable, and you say, let us pray. And by the time you're done praying, there's an exchange has happened. The native folk end up with the Bible, the colonizers end up with the land or end up with the precious resources. So that being said, what happens a lot of times in this colonizing process is the missionaries, the Europeans, end up demonizing the local practices, the local customs, the traditions, the religions, and not just that, even the people. Even the people's dark skin gets now put in the category of, see, God was not on your side before. There's something there's a curse on you all. And the curse is actually even evident in your skin tone. That same thing happened even here in America, where even after slavery, even after Jim Crow, during the 50s and 60s, more 60s and 70s, there was an awakening in Black people where they had to engage in positive self-talk. And so people like Malcolm X and the Last Poets, they had to encourage Black people with tropes like Black is beautiful. You had people like the artist Sam Cooke, who wrote the classic song, A Change Is Gonna Come. Sam Cooke used to have, the processed hair, trying to straighten his hair to make his hair look like it was of European descent. Many Black people did this. But around the 60s, with the whole Black is beautiful idea, Black people started realizing, wait a minute, Black is beautiful. I don't have to look like another ethnicity in order to find beauty in myself. I'm saying all that to say, what this person that we just watched is saying to these people in Kenya is, you all, the reason why you're rejecting our preaching that Jesus was Black is because you've been taught to hate Blackness. And because you've been taught to hate Blackness, you can't even receive this truth we came here to give you, that Jesus was Black. You're picking up rocks to stone us because you have, for centuries, you have imbibed and embraced this idea that Black can't be beautiful, that Black can't be godly, that whiteness is beautiful, that whiteness is godly. And so that's why you're rejecting us. You're not rejecting us because what we're saying is wrong. You're not rejecting us because what we're saying is a Johnny-come-lately twist on the Christian faith. You're rejecting us because you hate yourselves. And that's a crazy thing to say. I'm going to tell you in a second why I think that's so crazy. But let him say this one more time.
Black. Why? Because it upsets you. Hate the way you look. You hate anything Black. Why? Because it upsets your European colonizers. So they look, we're their brothers. We're here to help you. They start throwing rocks, men and women. They despise what the Bible says.
One of the strangest things about that, though, is the Hebrew Israelites are telling these Black folk in Kenya, you don't want to accept our Jesus is Black theology because you've been taught to hate Blackness, and it almost feels sacrilegious to you to say that Jesus was Black. We're trying to redeem you from that. We're here to help you. But what's odd about that to me is I would wager that very many people who embraced Hebrew Israelitism, the reason why you embrace it is because you too hate being black. You too hate the history that someone would have come from one nation to Africa to abduct black people, to bring them over here and subjugate them, oppress them, and own them. And you hate the idea that you are the lineage of that history. And so because you too have this self-hatred of this story of blackness, especially as it relates to descendants of Africans in America, because you hate that, you too have jumped ship. You too have said, is there any other history that we could apply to ourselves that would give us a boost, that would lift our self-esteem, other than we were just these helpless folks in Africa? We're not even the ones who gathered up the people who got enslaved and sold them off. No, we're the ones who got gathered up and sold off. Damn, we're not even the victorious ones in the story. You hate that story. And so you look around and you try to find where is there an absence? It's almost like one of my favorite shows is The Office, right? There's a period in the show called The Office where the main guy, Michael Scott, who's been the boss that the show is really based on for like 6 seasons. And then after 6 or 7 seasons, he leaves the show. And so now they're trying to figure out, okay, who's going to be the new boss? And so in the show, they select a boss. James says, yeah, when Steve Carell left the show, it was over. Well, every time I've watched the entire series of The Office about 10 times. It's 9 seasons long. I watched it about 10 times already, all 9 seasons. At some point in the season, though, in the I think the 8th season, a character becomes the new boss. And while he's the new boss, he goes away on a trip to Florida. They're based in upstate Pennsylvania. He goes on a trip to Florida. While he's away in Florida, another person comes in and sees his empty desk and says, oh, wait, there's an empty desk here? So I don't have to just be a lowly employee out here in the bullpen with the rest of you all. I can go sit in that empty desk and I can become the boss. So she goes and does it. Then when the boss finally comes back, he's like, yo, you're in my office. She said, hey, there was an empty desk. I took it. I'm the boss now. That sort of is what, to me, the Hebrew, and I know if you're a Hebrew Israelite, if you follow the teachings and you do all the reading and all that, I know you point to this manuscript here, you point to this person who said this here, and you say, if you add this and you add this and you add this and you add this, then it looks like we are those people, right? I understand. I've been through it all. To me, what the Hebrew Israelite experience is people who looked and said, man, we don't like the story of us. You look around for a vacancy and you see, is there any vacancy that we could fill as opposed to having to be us? And you see, man, okay, so you had the southern kingdom in Israel, you had Judah, and then after the exile, some people come back to the land, but a lot is lost. And you mean we don't know where those tribes are? There's a vacancy. Could we fill in that vacancy, since we don't know who those 12 tribes are now? We don't know where they are now. Can we sit in that seat? Can we be them? It's odd to me that these Hebrew Israelites are going to Kenya saying you hate blackness, so you won't receive what we're saying, when in actuality, I think you're doing the same thing. You don't like the history of blackness. And so you're trying to swap out your story for the story of some other people. There's a vacancy there. We're going to fill that role. It's sad because what's happening is you've got these folks who are descendants of African slaves in America back to Africa to talk to people in Kenya. But bottom line, what you're actually seeing is these peoples who actually could be united in very many ways. Very many things could unite these folks. But they're still being divided by a religion that's not native to any of them. The black folks in Kenya who were saying, not my Jesus wasn't white. I'm sorry, my Jesus wasn't black. Those folks and these Hebrew Israelite folks, you're still being divided by something that's not native to you. You're still letting religion, in whatever form, whether it's Islam, whether it's Christianity, you're letting people speak to you in a God tone. Meanwhile, the God who could come and clear all of this up, these are the true Jews. These are the people these are the God who could come and speak and clear any of these misconceptions up, remains silent, remains hidden, remains vacant. And yet here we are trying to figure out on our own who gets to speak for God, who gets to speak in a God tone, and who we're going to unify with and who we're going to separate from, because you don't see the God thing the way I see the God thing. The religion has done more harm over the centuries to divide people, to oppress people, to subjugate people, to keep women in subservient roles, to give people license to dehumanize other people, to dismantle people's culture, people's traditions, people's religion. And yet somehow we allow it to fool us into thinking it is our only hope for unity. It is our only hope for salvation. It is our only hope for bettering our society. Now, granted, has Christianity done good in Africa? It certainly has. You have hospitals, you have orphanages, you have healthcare, you have all these things that that people who are pushing the religion have added. I don't know how to weigh how good that is when it's doing all this harm at the same time. Because it's almost like, yeah, you're going into this foreign place and you're going to preach to them and you're going to dig wells and you're going to, but you're only doing these things. You're only giving them health care. You're only doing HIV prevention. You're only digging wells. You're only doing these things because you can't evangelize dead folk. You need to keep them alive long enough for you to preach to them. And then after you preach to them, you need them to look like success stories. So you've got to help them to live better than they lived before you got there. You're doing all these things not for humanitarian purposes. You're not doing these things because that's another human being. And if I was in that situation, I would want someone to do the same thing for me. No, you're doing it because, one, you're telling yourself, oh, these people are made in the image of God, so I'm doing this. I'm not doing this to honor their humanity. I'm really doing this to honor the deity. And then you're doing it because I want you to be a shining trophy for what my religion produces. I don't know how honorable that is. I don't know how commendable that is. And you're also doing it because you believe that you're going to be rewarded in heaven. I don't know how respectable that is. And I'm speaking from experience because I have done mission trips. I have done these things because those folks in Mexico are made in the image of God. So even I don't speak the language, those folks in France or London, I'm going to all these places preaching to honor the image of God, not because I think there are other humans out there who are hurting and they need my help. And I'm helping them because I would want someone to do the same thing for me if I was ever in need. Anyway, I said a lot. I'm curious. What have y'all been talking about in the chat? I've not been paying attention. I've just been sitting here pontificating. What are y'all thinking? What are you hearing? Am I off? Am I on point? Am I saying anything worthwhile here? Y'all talk to me. I'm gonna stick around for a few in the comments to see what y'all got going on. If I had to put a bow on what I'm saying, if I had to sum it up, I'm committed to helping people realize that you're letting people talk to you like God, while God has remained silent this entire time. You're letting people divide you from your family members. You're letting people divide you from potential opportunities in your life. You're letting people divide you from maybe your ethnic people, even because a God supposedly spoke, and you'd rather side with this God who remains hidden than other humans who you could actually be building relationship with. And I'm content and determined to never play into that scheme again. And I encourage you to disrupt that scheme any chance you get. James said, I almost accepted a missionary station in Cameroon and was told not to trust Nigerians, regardless if they were Christian. Christianity isn't helping Africans any more than any other. Feel you. Michael Apple says, BHI is a fascinating way. I think that's a fascinating way to be anti-Semitic. So bonus. If you're wondering why I'm putting certain chats on the screen, if Patreon supporters chat and I see it, I'm going to put them on the screen whether they super chat or not. If you got something that you definitely want me to not miss and you're not a Patreon supporter, definitely super chat it. But if you are a Patreon supporter and I miss something, maybe throw $1 in or something. Just that way you can point me to what you want me to see. Michael Apple says, I think we are up to 9 more hours of conversation. So we did a 3-hour conversation me and Michael Apple did the other day. We need to do a part 2. Somebody on Facebook said today that we didn't even start talking about sin until 2.5 hours into our 3-hour conversation. And even that, we didn't scratch the surface. There's so much that we didn't even get to, but I think it was a good introductory conversation. So Michael, would you be open to doing a part 2 to that? Because I would be with it for sure. And maybe soon, maybe sometime early in May, we can get to it. If you're a Patreon supporter and I didn't see your chat, I'm sorry. I'm looking through trying to see if I missed any. So Glenn Mitchell, I don't know if you are Kim Mitchell, just with a different screen name, but I'm going to put your chat on the screen just in case you are my Patreon supporter, Kim Mitchell, and I don't want to ignore her comment. If not, you get the benefit of that doubt. She says, or Glenn says, I dig that like a fucking shovel. I wish I knew what that was in reference to. James says, how can we help you in your efforts, aka call to action? Well, one of the things you guys can definitely do is share the content on this channel. I've been at, I think, 3,900 subs for a while now. I don't know if folks share the content here, and you don't have to share it if you're not comfortable or confident in sharing it. I'm trying to get to the point where I'm making better content that's worth sharing. I think a lot of the stuff that we've done on this channel is worth sharing, but I know sometimes the presentation, whether it be the optics or the technical difficulties that we've had on this channel before, if I haven't produced things that are worth sharing, I get it. But if you feel like, you really could share this content, please share the content. Like I said, the super chats definitely help. Joining the Patreon definitely helps. If you're on Facebook, I know people want me to get on other platforms, and I'm going to. If you're on Facebook, come through my Facebook page and just drop a comment. Sometimes I'm in there talking to Christians, and it helps for Christians to see it's not just Brady. When they see other people commenting and having similar stories or similar points of view, I used to say this when I was a Christian. When I was a Christian, I was trying to get people out of the general hip hop culture to consider, hey, you don't, just because there were a lot of people who did not want to consider Jesus because they thought it was a white man's religion. Then when they would see us, these Christian rap type dudes, and like, oh, you mean I could be that and that? I can be me just believing that. And one of the things I used to say is people don't want to join a person. They want to join a people. And so it's not enough to counter a culture with a person. You need to counter a culture with a counterculture. And so me on my own on Facebook saying, hey, I'm challenging this view, I'm challenging that view, is not enough to make people say, oh, I think he's got a point. A lot of times they need to see, if I were to abandon the thing that I'm on and start thinking like that, would I be alone? And when they see me and other people chiming in, agreeing, it helps give them the impression, oh, he's not alone. So if I were to think about this critically and I ended up abandoning my faith, then I wouldn't have to be alone either, because look, Brady's not alone. So to your question, James, one of the ways that you can support the efforts is help give people the impression that I'm not alone. I'm not the only person who saw the flaws in this system of belief and saw the need to repossess my faith. So those are just a few things that I could think of in terms of how you guys can support. So I definitely appreciate that question. Oh, also go back through, like if there's episodes that you've watched, it's great that you guys are in the chat. I definitely appreciate that because it helps me to not feel alone when I'm online. But maybe go back and drop an episode on the actual video, the comments that remain after the live, drop comments on the video. That also helps because YouTube is trying to figure out what to prioritize and what to show people in the algorithm. So if you're not liking, if you're not commenting, then YouTube is going to say, oh, this content must not be interesting enough. And so they're not going to prioritize it. So that's another way to help, is just drop a comment. Michael says, yes, I would be interested in another run at this. As for any follow-on, we can handle issues of identity, geopolitics, world history. Good stuff. And this is not a Patreon supporter, but it's a comment that I definitely think is worth posting. Jason H says, or maybe you are a Patreon supporter. Sometimes people support in Patreon under different names. So that's another thing that would be helpful. If your screen name on YouTube is not your screen name in Patreon, you may be on here supporting, and I should be highlighting your comments. So let me know, like, yo, I'm so-and-so in Patreon. Then I'll know to highlight your comments more frequently. But I wanted to highlight this comment. Jason says, never alone. We are all brothers. I'm going to put and sisters in there, out of Christ, instead of being brothers and sisters in Christ as we used to be. Definitely appreciate that. All right. So trying to keep this shorter than an hour so people can not be intimidated by it when they see it in their list of potential watches. So I'm going to get ready to dip. Jason says, and sisters, of course, my bad, no doubt. No, there is now no condemnation for those who are in this chat. But hey, much love. I really do. Even if I don't know you all, if we at least interact online, I have love for you and I want the best for you. And I honestly want to see people being free from things that we don't need to be chained to. And I think religion is definitely one of those things. So in that vein, I'm going to go ahead and dip. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll get with you. Peace. Oh, just in time. Right before I said peace, a super chat came through. Thank you so much, Jude, for the $4.99 super chat. Looking forward to your breakdown of your songs. So that's one thing you guys can also do. Let me know which songs, because I have songs that matter to me that I want to go back and deconstruct. But if there are any old songs of mine that you're like, yo, it'll be good to dive into this one, definitely let me know which songs you want me to make sure I hit in this series. The series is called raising the bar, not RAISE raising, no, leveling it, bringing it down to the ground, raising the bar. And I'll be starting that next week. All right, y'all. I'm out of here. Enjoy your day. Peace.